Turn the lights back on. Wow. Retro Electro Tech. When real audio ruled the world.
Greetings once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is Retro Ernest of Retro Electro Tech. And on the bench here is a Yamaha EMX 5000-12 powered mixer that was in my shop before. At that time, I did not perform any work at all to it. It was brought in by an individual who owned it previously. It is now owned by another customer, and the only thing I did was opened it up, and I know I was going through performing a preliminary evaluation / inspection and noted some problems on, I believe, because it's been over 3 years, I'm pretty sure, and if I remember correctly, there's a problem on the jack board at the rear, and I know there's an output issue, I believe on both channels, or maybe one channel, I don't know, or there's some intermittent behavior, but I believe there's an output issue nonetheless. And I think there's some bad solder joints. As a matter of fact, I know there's some bad solder joints. There's some stuff that that's all loosey-goosey and all that, and I pointed that out to the last guy and told him what it was going to take to go through and take care of the bad solder joints, go through and reflow some stuff, check things out and all that. And he didn't want to put the money into it, so he passed it on to the current customer as a point. So anyways, I've already had this powered up, no problems there, and I had it on the current limiter, not a single hiccup. It wasn't trying to short out or run away, dry heavy current, none of that stuff. So that's all good. And I remember too from before that there wasn't any power up issues or anything like that. So so that is the case. Like I said, it's the output board, the jack board, and a bunch of loose stuff, I think. So anyways, I'm going to dig into this thing, resolve that problem. Probably before I get started, I will just put a signal in, in the various inputs of the various channels and just kind of run through it and see what we got. And but again, I believe that there's going to be nothing on the outputs, if I'm not mistaken. So I may only just try one channel and just, if it's not outputting, it's not outputting. I'll stop there. And once I get that problem resolved on the board, which I'm pretty sure is the problem, those jacks there, the output jacks and all that are all loosey-goosey, I'm pretty sure. It's kind of coming back to me a little bit. And then after I get that problem resolved, then I'll go through the various channels and all that stuff and make sure signal is flowing from input to output and everything is working and so forth and so on and all that whoop-de-doo-ness. So anyways, let me go ahead and get the process started and I will be right back. And just like that, this powered mixer is all disassembled and ready for service. As you can see, there is a lot of disassembly involved to gain access to the boards for inspection, repair, and thorough maintenance of the controls. So the first order of business was to reflow the bad solder joints associated with these two Nutric speak-on connectors and these two 1/4-inch jacks on the main amp board. And let me briefly zoom in on a bad solder joint example, and I'm going to point it out. Okay, let me get oriented here. Okay, right there. And at first glance you might say, oh, well, that solder joint doesn't look too bad, and it actually doesn't. But notice the movement of the lead as I rock the connector back and forth a bit. Might be kind of hard to hone in on, but can you see that movement there? Look real good. Okay, see that? Hopefully you were able to see that. So, I just wanted to point out that quick example in the interest of time, but something also worth noting is, just by the very nature of how this type of gear is often used, it might be taken on the road, used at events, gigs, whatever, and as a result of that, it's subject to getting bumped around, jostled around. Plus, sometimes the inputs and outputs are used, pretty hard, pretty heavy, and despite the strain relief that's achieved by the jacks being screwed down, and secured to the panel or chassis, the leads of the jacks can still break free from their solder joints, from shock and vibration, especially if we're already dealing with weak solder joints to begin with. So again, that's why I'm putting emphasis on inspecting solder joints, especially around their inputs and outputs. And in moving forward, I want to also mention that I've been examining other areas across the landscape of all these boards, looking for problems that are obvious and those that are not. And as you can see, it's a rather large metropolis of solder joints and SMD components in this case. So since I only have so much time I can devote to this unit, I have to be as efficient as I can when inspecting these boards. And one method that helps so as to not get all overwhelmed and to help stay focused is to use a quadrant method of dividing up the board into bite-sized chunks when performing an inspection, and and just working across each quadrant systematically. So just envision in your mind's eye. You don't have to literally draw draw lines down the board and across the board, but just envision a vertical line, and then you can divvy up the board into additional quadrants, and then under magnification take a particular quadrant and examine your solder joints and components, move to another quadrant and work your way across and down systematically, or whatever is going to work. And again, that will help to make things a bit more digestible. So I've mentioned this before, but once again, I'm going to repeat things from time to time for newcomers to the channel and so forth. But anyways, back to the main amp section for a moment. So I've gone through and junction tested these NPN 2SC 3856s and their complementary PNP 2SA 1492 power transistors. And I did that, of course, in circuit in diode mode with a DMM. And the thing you need to be aware of is that with in-circuit testing of any component, you're going to obtain oftentimes erroneous and anomalous readings. In fact, I had to pull a few transistors for verification on account of other components within the circuit that were influencing my readings. So if you're aware of that, you can reason on the fact that if you go through a string of transistors and you see there's a lot of transistors on this board, and they're all pretty much reading that same anomaly, which these in fact are, and I'll kind of explain in brief what I'm talking about. Now, ultimately, all I am doing is just more of a pass or fail test. I just want to make sure there's nothing that's shorted or open, okay? So obvious stuff. Now, I don't have the time or the budget to yank the transistors out of circuit and go through and test them, unless I arrive at a problem where I have to do that. But otherwise, now I have the DMM here in diode test mode, and I'm going to just do one of these NPNs real quick. And there's a lot of information out there how to read a transistor with a DMM. It's very, very straightforward. But in this case, I'm just going to place my positive lead here on the base. Okay, so it's base, collector, and emitter. And you'll probably hear a little beep. Okay, you hear that as I touch a collector with the negative lead? And then the emitter. Okay, so these junctions are reading normal. However, where there's a bit of an anomaly, if you will, is normally if this transistor was out of circuit, I wouldn't be getting a reading if I was to move my positive lead, for example, over to the collector and then my negative to the emitter, but I am, okay? And if I reverse them, reverse my leads, positive on the emitter, negative to the collector, I'm getting a reading. And normally that shouldn't be the case. But I know in this situation, because they're all reading that way, this is an influence of these transistors being in circuit. So does that mean that there's absolutely no problem with any of these junctions? Well, no, but I can reason that, once again, because all of the transistors are reading the same, that this is a characteristic of in-circuit testing in this situation. So you have to kind of weigh that, and if you have any doubts about what you're looking at, the only way to verify for certain is to remove a component from circuit and go from there. And I did that with a few of them. I pulled them from circuit, and they were just fine because I just wanted to be double, triple sure. Now again, I'm not going to pull all of them out, not necessary, but that's something you need to be aware of. In-circuit testing has its limitations, but otherwise, based on just I guess deductive reasoning or whatever the case, I can pretty much conclude that these are fine. If I have to go in for some reason and perform more in-depth testing, if the customer would want me to go to those lengths and is able to put the budget in, if that came about, then that's something that we would deal with at that time. So anyways, let me go ahead and move forward. And while I have the amp board pulled off of this big old, let me bring it into view, off this big old heat sink here. And let me put this back, bear with me. I'm going to be recapping it along with the switch mode power supply here because of the electrical wear and tear placed on the electrolytics in these higher current areas of this powered mixer. Now I spot checked the main filter caps in the power supply and they were reading fine. And Yamaha did use high quality Nishikon caps throughout, but again, I don't want to take chances of having an electrolytic poop the bed in these hard working areas of this amp. After all, this unit is 20 years old now or thereabouts, so there you have it. And anyways, I'm going to move on over to this these control boards over here, so let's go ahead and get to that. So in short, and before closing this video, this part one anyways, what I'm going to be doing here is just some needed maintenance now that this unit is 20 years old. And I'm going to definitely get these sliders all cleaned out. And when I do that, I kind of will go through the process in the next video somewhat and kind of show what I'm doing. But these let me get a pair of tweezers here. But there's a lot of accumulation, debris and all that. In fact, if I I don't know if you can see that, but you see this debris and hair and all that stuff. Pretty nasty, I know. But anyways, this is the kind of stuff that has worked its way into the openings of these VRs here, these sliders. So, I'm going to blow these out a little bit and kind of pick out what I can and go through a thorough cleaning and reintroduction of lubricant. And also too, same thing with all these switches. I'm going to reintroduce a little bit of contact cleaner into these switches. These most of these pots here are all sealed up pretty good, so and as far as I can tell, they're operating pretty good. They don't appear to be intermittent or noisy or anything like that, but I'm going to go through them in a little bit more detail. And when I kind of get into the cleaning and relubrication of the sliders, these sliders as well have a lot of fuzz and debris and crap and hair or whatever that's worked its way into these as well. These are just kind of opened up. The the resistive track and the contacts and all that are just kind of wide open. So these need to be cleaned out. All of these switches and all of these switches here. And I'm going to clean out the jacks and whatnot, just get everything nice and clean. And I'll go over that in the next video. And also too, same thing with the recapping. I will show the recap and whatnot. So anyways, I'm going to end this here. This is part one. There is going to be a part two. I just need to get a few caps ordered that I do not have in stock, and then we'll move forward. So as I always say, everyone, peace, love, music, and the vintage audio that brings it to your ears. Till next time.
This is a poor man's shoe production.